Hi, I'm FishingPole and welcome to part 2 of lesson 2 of my tutorial series on QMD. In the previous part, we talked about what are particles, what are their properties, and how they work. In this part, we will talk about what is an accelerator, how is it designed, and how is it built in order to produce our very first particle beam. Okay, let's open J to see the recipe that we'll do at the end of this lesson. We need 1 million PU of boron ions. We need those boron ions to have an energy between 600 kilo electron volt to 1 mega electron volt, as we can see by the range stat. And we also need a minimum focus of 2. This boron ion can be produced in an ion source with deborane, and as we can see, this ion source outputs 10 kPu per tick of boron ions. But it also outputs them at 0 energy and 0.4 focus, which is clearly not enough. For this purpose, we have the linear accelerator. The linear accelerator, or LINAC for short, accelerates and focuses beams in a straight line. It has the following stats. 1. Length. This is how long the accelerator is, and it affects the beam's focus loss. 2. Accelerating voltage. This affects the beam's output energy and is increased by RF cavity structures. 3. Quadrupole strength. This affects the beam's output focus and is increased by quadrupole magnet structures. 4. Temperature. This is the accelerator's current temperature. It is affected by the heat balance of the accelerator and the choice of liquid coolant. 5. Max temperature. This is the accelerator's maximum safe temperature, and it is affected by the choice of internal structures. Don't let temperature exceed it, or the accelerator will blow up. 6. Heat. This is the accelerator's heat level. It increases via the internal structures and also the environment, because generally your accelerator will run considerably colder than the environment around it. Heat level can be reduced with coolers and a liquid coolant. And 7. Power. This is the accelerator's power usage. It is increased by internal structures and the ion source. Now, to design the accelerator, we have two equations. We have an energy equation and a focus equation. The energy equation is pretty simple. The output beam energy is equal to the beam's initial energy plus the absolute value of the particle's charge times the total voltage provided by RF cavity structures in the accelerator. For example, let's say we have a 2 mega electron volt beam, and this has a charge of -2. We're putting it through a LINAC with a total voltage equal to 3 megavolts. Therefore, it will come out of the accelerator with 2 mega electron volts plus 2. Remember, we're using the absolute value times 3 megavolts, and that equals 8 mega electron volts of energy. The focus equation is a little more complicated. Output focus is equal to initial focus plus the absolute charge times the total quadrupole magnet strength minus the focus loss per block times the accelerator's length. For example, let's take a standard 10 kPu per tick beam that consists of particles with a charge of -1. This beam starts from an ion source, so it has 0.4 focus, and it goes down a 20 block long accelerator, and this accelerator also has a total quadrupole strength of 2 Tesla. Therefore, the output focus will be 0.4, our initial focus, plus 1 times 2 for the focus gain from the quadrupole magnets, minus 0.04, the focus loss per block, times 20 the accelerator's length, and that equals 1.6 focus at the exit of the accelerator. Now, in order for the accelerator to gain quadruple strength and voltage, it needs to have quadrupole magnet and RF cavity structures built on the inside. Structures are comprised of multiple identical components arranged in a certain way. In the linear accelerator, we have two structures. The first one is the RF cavity. The RF cavity is built by placing a ring of 8 identical cavity blocks around an accelerator beam block, and cavities cannot be placed next to each other. They have to be placed at least one block apart. So this, for example, is a valid 2 cavity structures. But I cannot put a third cavity sandwiched between these two. The other structure that we can build for a linear accelerator is the quadrupole magnet. A quadrupole magnet structure is formed by placing 4 identical magnets in a plus formation around a beam block. Quadrupole structures can be placed next to each other, unlike cavities. Each one of these structures will inherit the stats of the one component making them up. So what are the stats it inherits? First of all, the design stat. I name it design stat because it is the stat you will use in the design equations. For cavity structures, that is the accelerating voltage, and for quadrupole magnet structures, that is the magnet strength. Then we've got power and efficiency. This is the power cost of the structure. The power cost of a structure actually depends on the other structures, because the total energy cost of all the components in your accelerator will be equal to the total base power divided by the average efficiency across all your components. For example, if I put one copper cavity and one magnesium diborate quadrupole, the cavity has an efficiency of 50% and the magnesium diborate has an efficiency of 80%. Therefore, my accelerator would have 50 plus 80 divided by 2, 65% efficiency. And therefore, the actual power consumption would be 500 plus 2,000, 2,500, divided by 65%. Putting that in a calculator, the power consumption would be just under 3,850 RF per tick. Then we've got the heat production. This is how much heat the component produces, and you can dissipate it with coolers. And finally, we've got the maximum operating temperature. The accelerator temperature must not exceed this, or the accelerator will blow up. The explosion is about TNT strength, so it's kind of weak, but it's annoying to fix. The maximum operating temperature of the accelerator is set as the minimum across all the components used in the accelerator. For example, if I were to also install, let's say, an niobium tin quadrupole in my accelerator alongside this copper cavity and this magnesium diborate quadrupole, then the maximum operating temperature of my accelerator would be 10 Kelvin. And this is what restricts what coolants we can use. I'm going to put a table on screen with the coolants we can use, as well as the components. And as you can see, the niobium titanium components can only use helium, whereas if we didn't have it and we also used magnesium diborate, then we would be able to also use neon alongside helium. So let's go back to the concept of structures using the stats of only one of their components. This copper RF cavity will contribute to the accelerator 200 kilovolts voltage and not 200 times 8, but also similarly, the heat production will not be 2.4 thousand heat, but only 300 heat. And of course, the base power again is 500 ref per tick and not 4000. Finally, the maximum operating temperature is going to be set to 350 Kelvin. Now, if we put a magnesium diboride quadrupole next to it, this will also give 0.5 Tesla to the accelerator. It would produce 508 heat, and it would add 2000 RF per tick to the base power. Finally, it would set the base operating temperature to 39 Kelvin. Accelerators need coolers and liquid coolants in order to stay cool. Coolers work just like in NCO, they have a placement rule satisfied to gain cooling. For example, we can take this redstone cooler right here. It gives 115 heat per tick of cooling, but only if you put it next to at least one cavity and one magnet. Liquid coolants are used to actually remove the heat from the accelerator and also reduce its temperature. They can be used in a supercooler loop in order to recycle them and keep the accelerator cool. Now that we've talked about how an accelerator works, let's design it. Let's start from the energy equation. We can see that we need an energy between 600 kilo electron volt to 1 mega electron volt. We will substitute 0 for the initial energy since we start from an ion source, and 1 for the charge, and then we will solve for voltage. We see that we need a voltage between 600 kilovolt to 1 megavolt. To do this, let's go to the cavities. We can use three types of cavities. We can use copper cavities, we can use magnesium diboride cavities, and we can use niobium tin cavities. Anything else gives too much voltage. Even though the efficiency penalty is pretty big for the copper cavity, we can use 3 of them. It doesn't cost us a lot of power, doesn't produce a lot of heat, and also doesn't restrict massively our maximum operating temperature. And it's also cheap, it's just copper. So we're going to use 3 copper cavities, which means we will add 600 kilovolt to our accelerator, 900 heat per tick, and 1500 RF per tick power usage. Also, since the copper cavity has an operating temperature of 350 Kelvin, we can use water. And now let's go to the focus. We're going to need a focus of 2, as you can see from the recipe, and the beam also starts with a focus of 0.4 from the ion source. Therefore, before any focus losses are calculated, we will need at least 1.6 focus. In order to also factor in the focus losses, let's say that we want to achieve about 2.5 Tesla from focus. Because remember that the boron has a charge of 1, so every 1 Tesla of magnet strength is also 1 focus. Copper magnets give too little magnet strength. Niobium tin is going to force us to use helium, so let's take a middle of the road approach and go with magnesium diboride magnets. Let's use 5 of those, which means we get 2.5 Tesla. We will need 10,000 RF per tick, and we will also have to cool 2.9 thousand heat per tick. Finally, this will also set the maximum temperature to 39 Kelvin, so we can also use neon to cool this magnet down. So what's our output focus here? We have 0.4 from the starting ion source, plus 2.5 for our magnets. And now what is the focus loss? We use a standard 10 kPa per tick beam, so the focus loss is 0.04, But how long is the accelerator going to be? Now we're going to place our components with one block of air between them. So we'll place first a magnet, then air, then a cavity, then air, then another magnet. This will allow us to place a lot of coolers, but in doing so we're also going to make a fairly long accelerator. Putting it all together and also adding the casing, this means our accelerator will be 17 blocks long. So we start with 2.9 focus, and then we need to remove 0.04 times 17 focus, and that results to 2.22. This gives us enough wiggle room to have 5 extra blocks of travel outside of the accelerator, because remember, our beam loses 0.04 focus per block. So now that we have our design down, let's actually get to building. LINACs are built as a hollow cuboid box that is 5 blocks wide, 5 blocks tall, and between 7 to 100 blocks long. From our design chapter, we saw that our accelerator is going to be 17 blocks long, so we're going to make a 5 by 5 by 17 blocks long accelerator. So a little disclaimer here, I'm using the schematica mod to build schematics of all the two books you will see in this lesson and beyond. Let's load up the schematic. I'm making a frame, as you can see here. I'm going to then print it. And then the next step is to make a line from the center of this face all the way to the center of the opposite face with beam blocks. This is the path the beam is going to take through the accelerator. The next step is to place the components. As you can see, they're placed with a gap of air blocks between them so that we can maximize cooling area. And then you can place the coolers. The coolers are a combination of redstone and quartz coolers. The redstone requires one electromagnet and one cavity, and the quartz coolers require one redstone. And to fill it all out, we also have iron coolers which require a magnet, and gold coolers which require 2 iron. And now for the final touches. The final touches are to place the final auxiliary blocks, the controller, 2 coolant vents, the power port, an ion source port. This is not mandatory, but it helps with automation, the ion source itself, and a beam port. We will need to get this multi-tool in order to switch this beam port into output mode. Same thing for this coolant vent. Finally, I'm going to place glass on the ceiling, and as you can see, the accelerator has now formed. Let's look at the accelerator stats. As you can see, it has a length of 17. The RF cavities are at 600 kilovolt. The quadrupole strength is at 2.5 Tesla. The maximum temperature is 39 Kelvin. And as you can see, the accelerator produces a maximum heat of 4075 heat. Before we turn it on, we have to install the cooling system. And as you can see, we also have overcooled our accelerator. Now, how the cooling works here. A linear accelerator utilizes, as you can see in the accelerator cooling tab here, it utilizes 1 millibucket of liquid coolant, and that is for all the coolants, to cool down 1000 heat. Therefore, our 4075 heat will need 4.075 millibuckets of coolant, which means that we will need to produce 4.075 millibuckets per tick of whatever liquid we use. We're going to use liquid neon, as we said before. So, how do we get this liquid neon? It is obtained by the supercooler. As you can see, it takes 4 ticks to produce 1 millibucket of liquid neon. So the supercooler has a speed of 0.25 millibuckets per tick. Therefore, if we increase its speed to 17 times that of base, it will produce 4.25 millibuckets per tick. And so what we will do is place down a supercooler right between here, get two superlaminar ducts to make the closed loop, set this face to auto output, and then we're going to install 16 upgrades of each kind into the supercooler. As we can see, it has a speed multiplier now of times 17. We're going to get a bucket of liquid neon to start the loop. Then we're going to need a portable tank here, which is going to act as our infinite particle source. And we will also need this flux point to feed the supercooler and our accelerator with energy. And last but not least, a lever to give our accelerator a redstone signal so it can turn on. The accelerator's temperature has now fallen below the maximum temperature, so it is safe to turn it on. And turning it on, we get 10 kPa per tick of boron ions, with an energy of 600 kilo electron volt and a focus of 2.22, just how we predicted it. And that marks the end of this part. So, part 2 recap. We saw how an accelerator works, and how do we build it, and what purpose do we want it for. And what can we look forward to in the next part? We can look forward to actually putting this beam that we just got to use. And we'll get to use it with particle chambers. So, I will be seeing you in the next part. Goodbye.